Welcome to Coffee with Democrats, a sensible platform for progressive conversations. Coffee with Democrats is a grassroots movement dedicated to hearing from Democrats, candidates, legislators, and friends from all political backgrounds who want great conversations. Coffee with Democrats is committed to increase Democrat voter registration and Democrat voter turnout by making voting more exciting and meaningful. And now here's your host of Coffee with Democrats, Kevin Dawson.
Well, good morning. Good morning. This is a great day today. We're going to be speaking with one of the candidates from Georgia, Daniel Jackson. He's a candidate for Georgia State House 12. I think I'm saying that right. Anyhow, we're going to be doing this as a joint co-host with Calais out of Arkansas. Calais was able to go to Georgia here recently and meet personally with Mr. Jackson, and we are so excited to have had that opportunity for her to be there in person, along with the Georgia Democrats and the Georgia Coffee with Democrat organization. So we're going to turn it over to Calais to have this conversation. But before we do that, we would like for everybody to do two things. Please go down into the corner down there and share with us what coffee you're drinking today, so that we can have that this Coffee with Democrats. Also, go to the top up there and share that you are on this Twitter space with all of your Twitter followers, and ask them to join you on this conversation so you can hear this, because this is going to be an important conversation for us with Coffee with Democrats, to be able to help a fellow Democrat in Georgia and help promote his campaign. So, Calais, you want to take it over?
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. I am so excited about this conversation. Audra and I both were in Georgia just a couple of weeks ago for some events that we had for Madeline's campaign, Madeline Ryan Smith, there in Georgia. And we were very lucky to meet Mr. Jackson at both of those events and had some really great conversations with him, and invited him on to Coffee with Democrats to talk about his campaign there. I do want to introduce Daniel Jackson. Daniel was born in Fort Polk, Louisiana, due to his father being in the military. Both his mother and his father come from a small town called Jackson, Alabama. Roll Tide. But he was primarily raised in Augusta, Georgia area, since his father worked in Army communications. He joined the Army in January 2001, also in the field of communications. Halfway through the Army, through his Army career, he transitioned from being a senior non-commissioned officer to a warrant officer. Daniel retired from the Army in January 2021 after 20 years of service. After retirement, he performed duties as a government contractor for 1 year, including roles as a strategist and vice president of a government contracting company. He is very passionate about education. growing up in underserved communities and then going on to complete 20 years of federal service helped him understand the importance of education. Education is key to changing a lot of the problems that we have taking place across the United States and the world. Daniel is a huge fan of music, sports, and comedy. He also likes to travel and spend time with his daughters, Jazminh, who is 7, and Amaia, who is 5. Thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us this morning. It's so great to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thank you very much for inviting me out here. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's so great to have you. How have you been since we saw you just a few weeks ago in Georgia?
I've been busy, trying to get out to spread the good message about, how important 2024 is. There's a lot of organizing that has to be done. So me and the team, we've been, just grinding, trying to get out and connect with as many leaders across the 12th congressional district as possible. So yeah, it's a daily grind, but it's been pretty fun.
You've been out there. You've been out there. When Audra and I were talking with you, we had some really great conversations, and you were talking about all of the events that you've been attending there in your area. And it was just so good to see you out at Madeline's event, supporting her, and out in the community. It's something that we don't really see a lot of. At least here where I'm at, we don't do that a lot. So that was really refreshing. And we need to see more of that from candidates and elected officials. I, I really.
In the military, right? Like if you're going to be in a leadership position, as you said, I think you have to be visible, right, to the people who are going to want to see you and ask you those questions. Because at the end of the day, they want to hold you accountable, right? And as an elected official, you have to understand that about the people who are going to vote for you. So, no, I think that's like one of the key elements to getting the vote out, right? Or getting people to turn out for the vote is for us to be visible, for people or our constituents to actually see us and know that we're real. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. 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 Well, I would just love to know what inspired you to run for office.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So my inspiration actually came from a number of things. So my background, which I know we'll talk about more, but my background was very different from your traditional person. I think that's in politics from what I see. I didn't come up like knowing a lot about politics and things of that nature, but I got a crash course in politics in the military. So yeah, you could say prior to the military, I was, probably undereducated, uninformed. But I went to the military at 17 years old, and the things that I learned out about the world while I was out there for those 20 years away from home, traveling the world serving, it to come home after 20 years and to really see the things that at the state and local level that need to be fixed. It was inspiring to me to see people who are pushing towards that goal, right? Because the Democratic Party is alive and well here in Georgia. But I think the thing is that they need help, right? And I think from what I understood, or what I, going back to the inspiration, it was inspiring to see everyone pushing, but I knew I had to actually go out and actually be a part of that as well. So I my federal experience for 20 years, I feel like that was something that at this time it's needed for the Democratic Party. Someone to step up to the forefront, as I said before, somebody that people can believe in here locally. So yeah, it was inspiring, like, once again, just to see the people who believe in the Democratic Party out here in the 12th congressional district and around these rural parts of Georgia.
Daniel, I just wanted to say hi really fast. This is Audra. You can see I'm in Connecticut, but it was really great to meet you and speak to you. We were in Georgia. I also, like, sort of going off of, or I guess extending what you were just talking about, I was reading your information on your website, and it seems you've experienced quite a lot in your life, including at a young age. So you left high school at 14 to work full time to help your family. And then you know, you went on to get your degree, served 20 years in the Army, achieved a master's degree, and are now sort of working to help encourage and motivate youth in your community. Can you just speak a little bit about how those life experiences and the work you're doing today will inform your work as a representative for the 12th district?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And good speaking to you once again, Audra. You know, I enjoyed the time with both you and Callie when we were down at Statesboro. So once again, it's great to connect with, you know, Democrats in different states. But yeah, so my background, you know, I haven't gone too far in depth. I kind of give everybody the highlights, but here for this conversation, I think it's good for me to just kind of delve into some of these things. So prior to me coming into the military, I grew up in underserved communities, and even though my father was in the military, we're from a small town, as you saw in the bio, in Jackson, Alabama, and you know, this is a very small town, which is pretty much the equivalent of one of the smaller towns you might find in the 12th congressional district, right? Jackson, Alabama is not a traditional city; it's a town, right? So to understand the people, how they function in towns, and then to understand I would say the amount of information that is available to us. I didn't understand that until later, right? Because the things that I was raised on in my community, it was a totally separate culture from what I experienced once I got to the military, right? I got to the military 17 years old. I had a lot of, you could say, street in me, where you know, it was just, you know, I wasn't bashful about a lot, but I wanted to learn. So, I mean, I met friends, like one of my best friends now, he's Korean. He's from California, right? So California being totally different from the state of Alabama, I started to learn some of the things that were going on in California. And I'm like, man, that's pretty cool. I wish, you know, we could actually implement some of that back home, right? So that started to happen frequently throughout my military time, whether it was me just communicating with friends and people from different cultures, or whether it was me actually learning something from the federal government, right? For 20 years, the one thing that the federal government does do, they kind of level the playing field, where everyone, no matter what your gender is, you know, what your color is, you all get paid the same by rank, right? So there's an equality to it, right? So there's some certain things that I learned along the way through a lot of the training that they offered, that it basically shaped me as a person, right? So I had a lot of shaping when I was younger, which was from a totally different culture, right? A lot that I didn't experience. And then you moved on to the federal side of the house for 20 years, where I was able to move to places like Hawaii, right? Japan, Korea. I was able to see the world. So fast forward to now, I returned back to Augusta, Georgia. There are things in Augusta, Georgia, where we can clearly see that we need to improve upon: education, healthcare, so on and so forth. But then what you don't start to realize is that Augusta is actually on the better side of it, right? If you get further out into the 24 counties that make up the 12th congressional district, you start to see that they're further away from the information. They're further away from the resources and things of that nature. So for me, learning everything that I've learned throughout my travels, I felt like it was incumbent upon me just to, one, bring the knowledge and the information, but then two, be able to make sure that people aren't confused by the misinformation, right? Because that's another thing in the rural counties. Being visible is key, but at the same time, being able to bring the right information so people understand what's going on in DC, so people understand what's going on at the state capitol. That's key as well, because people don't really understand how their culture or how their little niche fits into the grand scheme of things. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. That was great. And I absolutely agree. It is different. Um, you know, the bigger, more populated areas, how those towns and communities are. Whereas when you get into the more rural areas, there does tend to be, you know, different. There's a different lifestyle out here. I live in a very rural area in Arkansas, and I do notice the difference when I go into the big city, Little Rock. Um, but we did. So you are running for Congress against Rick Allen. And Rick Allen voted to overturn the results of the 2020 election. What impact do these actions have on our country as a whole?
Yeah, so 20 years in federal government, 20 years defending this country. I deployed twice to Iraq early on. I was less than 21 when I was deployed twice, right? There was for Operation Iraqi Freedom. I take this one personal for the simple fact that, once again, the United States is made up of many cultures, right? And so you have to understand that the federal government, the United States Army, is representative of all of those different cultures, right? So there's no white, black, whatever colors. It's you're a U.S. soldier defending the homeland. So what is disheartening is to know that you put a lot of work into defending a country where you have representatives that are motivated by things that are other than country, right? And so Rick Allen, I try to deflect every time someone asks me about him, because even though he is a problem, I feel like he's a microcosm of the problem. He follows Donald Trump blindly. And so you can look at the 2020 election denial, that whole campaign. It was a direct result of that was January 6th, an attack on the Capitol. So for me as a American and as a veteran, what Rick Allen is doing, being a political pawn for the Republican Party and for the people on that side who they really don't care too much about America at this point. It's their party over America. I think it's dangerous and it's offensive. So yeah, hopefully I answered the question. I could expand upon that, but I'll leave it there.
No, you did. You answered the question. Really disheartening to see, the events after January 6th and how that has played out with our elected officials who have chosen party or even person rather over country, and that isn't the way it's supposed to be. And to see that it's sad. It does show the division that we have, but not only the division, where are your where do you stand?
Right.
Because they're obviously standing with a person, with a party, rather than what is best for the better of the country.
Yeah.
So I think it's very telling of who they are as people, first, and then as elected officials. Hey, Georgia, I see you.
Hey y'all, what's up?
Good
Good morning.
morning.
I just have a really quick question. So for Georgia 12 congressional districts, just looking at voter turnout and how elections in the past have gone, Rick Allen has been in office since 2015, and his normal contender from the Democratic Party is Liz Johnson, who has traditionally not had a primary contender. When you look at that voting record, you see probably about a 40-60 Democratic-Republican split in the congressional 12th district. My question is, and really not really not a set out plan, but more of a brainstorming moment. What can we do in CD12 to get Democrats over that 50% threshold? If we know that Rick Allen has traditionally kept that 60%, what's our plan to get that extra 20%, those moderate Republicans, those independents, to not only get registered to vote and be voting blue, but then also show up to the polls on election day?
I'm so glad you asked that question because I think that's the most important question of all. Because voter turnout is the key, right? We can look at the 2022 election results, and we can see that the entire 12 congressional district, every county, I think the highest was the Republican-led districts, and even they only turned out at around a 60% clip, right? Maybe a little over some of them. So when you start to talk about 50% of our population in the 12th congressional district being concentrated in two counties, right, being Columbia County and Richmond County, and then you have a large clip down in Statesboro as well as in Dublin, you start to understand that the problem with our turnout is belief. And so that's what I've learned from the Dublin team, the team of Democrats is down there, Statesboro. We really need people on ground, visible, in all of these different areas, right? Like all 24 counties are in play. We need resources to go to these places, right? And when I say resources, I want to be very specific. The people who are in politics right now in the 24 counties here tend to be older. We need to attract the youth into this conversation, right? And so you get into and this is just me from my observations. What it seems is to me is that city folks in Atlanta are a little hesitant to come to the rural areas to put into the work. But I think that's, once again, that's the key. If we can get our influencers, and it doesn't always have to be a political influencers, if we can get our influencers that support the Democratic movement down to these rural areas, I think we're going to have a fighting chance. And then the one thing I want to really focus on is right? Unifying the platform. I think a lot of times within the Democratic Party, not even think, I know, we tend to have a huge platform, right, where we invite everyone in, all these different cultures, but those cultures don't have each other's backs, right? So the LGBTQIA plus community, a lot of times they're out there fighting by themselves. You know, if we claim to be a Democratic Party, we need to act like it. And we need to make sure the leaders across the board in all these major cities, that they're all tied together. We're in lockstep. We're messaging the same, and we're actually pushing a message in the rural areas that it will actually sell. We can't cookie cut and take it from Atlanta, what's actually selling out there. We definitely can't take what's in DC. What we need to do is we need to focus on what we do well, but then we need resources from the outside. We need those resources from California, from Colorado, from New York, from DC. We need people to be heavily invested in flipping Georgia, but we need to be able to message what we need. We need to be able to communicate effectively, and we need to start communicating now. So hopefully that answers your question.
That was excellent. And it brings, I think, to the next question that I was going to ask, which is sort of related to what you were talking about. So I think it was last week we had Ken Martin on from the DNC, who was an amazing guest. It was a great conversation. And one of the things that we talked about was the need for the Democratic National Party, the National Committee, to start investing in rural areas, rural candidates, local candidates, building from the ground up. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to what you would like to see the DNC do moving into the 2024 election, and how, what you think they should be doing or can be doing to support candidates like you and Madeline and others.
Yeah, no, absolutely. First and foremost, the DNC, we have a lot of star power, right? We have a lot of people who, people believe in, but I think that they're going to the same areas, right, to gin up the same, but by some of the research that we've done at the higher levels, we would think not. What I'm saying is, if we can get those resources from the DNC, i.e., let's get some access to some funding so we can actually get those particular influencers that we know for a fact will help us in this area. Let's also start to tailor make our message to the young voters. The young voters are in play. The young people hate politics. This is one thing I've started to learn. I have a lot of nephews and nieces, like, strewn all across the 12th congressional district. They dislike politics because it's a lot like gangs, right? It's like red versus blue, literally. So you don't want to come here and to the 12th congressional district and play the red versus blue game, but you want to play the I got your back game, right? You want to showcase to the people who are young that, hey, the party that's actually supporting you are the ones that are actually looking out for your future. The Republicans have nothing to offer from a future standpoint. It's everything is now, right? So what you have to showcase to the young people who are going through issues with, underage pregnancies, we have to be able to, come in with resources to showcase how we handle that, right? So on and so forth. So forth. You have the mentorship programs. We're in deep need of those around our area, right? Because once again, Republicans are pointing the finger like, oh, you guys can't, Democratic-led cities, you can't even lead, all this violence. they won't dedicate any resources to it though, right? So we have to be forceful in our message to put the Republicans on the spot. And the only way we can do that is messaging. We need resources. We need funding. We need to be able to boost what Madeline is saying in Statesboro, right? We need to be able to boost what I'm saying in the Augusta, Georgia, and Evans area. We need to be able to boost the Democratic message from this area. Georgia is in play. If we look at the 9 to 5, situation right now, as far as how many congressional districts vote are Republican versus Democrat, I think we're missing the picture. There's been a huge influx of people who vote Democrat. So what we need to start focusing on is how do we energize those people. So the DNC question, just to wrap all that up, if the DNC can actually start sending more resources, the DNC can actually focus in and say, hey, you have allies here. You just need to better synchronize and coordinate with them. I think that we're going to be able to really solve a lot of issues. So I think it's the chair of the Democratic Party. He actually has a rural county initiative. I would love to have that conversation with him as well as some of the other leaders.
That's awesome. That's excellent. I agree with everything you said. I mean, I think too, just sort of building off what you said, one of the things I found with a lot of people, both, young and older, but I think particularly young, I find this with my students, they don't trust politicians. They don't trust politics. And I think part of what I heard when we were talking in Georgia, and then I'm hearing you say in all of your answers today, is that your aim is to be a representative as opposed to a politician, which I think is what is badly needed today in this country.
No, absolutely. And just to go further into that, the young folks, yes, let me say this, the D is toxic in the 12th congressional district and in a lot of places across the South, right? And it's because we don't explain ourselves well. What happens is you'll have a message that comes from California or New York, and traditionally, or let me say what the culture actually is here in the South, it is anti that, right? So if the Republicans in the South, they've been very effective of taking those messages that California Democrats may be putting out, which may be good for their area, right? But then it's magnified over here in the South as look how silly the Democrats are, right? The only way we can combat that, we can't combat that with commercials, right? We can't combat that with sending nice notes to the mail. We have to be there in the community to say, okay, no, Daniel Jackson's a Democrat, Madeline's a Democrat, right? These are all Democrats. Have a conversation with them and then hold them accountable. They're actually right down the street, right? Well, you'll see a lot of us. We'll be here, quite often to talk about why the people in DC that are representing us on TV, why you should support them as well, right? Because we're trying to win local, state, and at the federal level. So we actually have to have enough resources on ground though to get to all these areas, right? We got 24 counties we have to actually cover. So yeah, there needs to be a kumbaya moment. But then there also, like say the DNC, they really need to focus in on that fact, right? That the belief is not there. The belief in politics. We need to get more people participating. And the only way you can get them participating is by learning what they want politics to be. Because the current politics and the way we conduct business is not working.
I absolutely agree with everything, all of that. My question is, the right has been they have been fiercely focused on anti-LGBTQ plus legislation and rhetoric. What will you do to protect the LGBTQIA plus communities and to fight against that rhetoric that's coming from the right?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, when it comes to the LGBTQIA plus community, we really need to ensure that the federal protections are there, right? And it's sad to say this, once again, going back to the fact that I defended this country for 20 years, to come back and to understand that you need federal protections. And there are cultures that have needed federal protections in the United States for a while, right? But that's very important. First and foremost, we need people at the federal level within Congress, since clearly the Supreme Court has made their position clear on a few things. We need people within Congress that can actually, create those laws and those precedents to make sure that we're protected at the federal level. Now, going to the state and local level, we can see that, and going back to where I'm from, Alabama and Georgia, there are some very, very, very strong views on the LGBTQIA plus community. So what we need to do here is we need to organize, right? We need to educate. I'll tell you a personal story about myself from Alabama. I had an uncle on my mom's side. His name was Napoleon Dixon. And my uncle was openly gay when I was younger, right? So even though I grew up in the church, right, and I was constantly around a lot of people, men of the cloth that were, against homosexuality. The fact that my uncle was openly gay, it helped normalize that to the young folks in our family, right, in our community. So I can tell you right now, that's not the truth in all communities down south. There's still a large misunderstanding behind LGBTQIA plus who they are, and things of that nature. So I think it's important to highlight the community in a good light and to message to people like, hey, this is right now it's a divide and conquer tactic, what I understand. And LGBTQIA plus, the community needs allies. So at the state and local level, we have to, once again, the Democratic platform is huge. We have to act like it, right? We need to defend at the state and local level where Republicans are in charge right now. It's a cruel fact. But what we have to do is understand that and understand that the things are going to probably continuously come out of those different government institutions are going to be against the community until we actually take power. But the only way we get power is by making sure we message well and making sure we organize well within state and local.
I wanted to just sort of like follow up on that, because you said before that the Republicans are playing this sort of divide and conquer game, and they're doing that strongly. They've been doing that for a while, but one of the ways that we're seeing across the country, but especially I want to say in the South and Midwest, one of the ways in which they're trying to sort of roll back the normalization of LGBTQIA plus communities and ways of being is through like book banning. So Calais has had a few for the Arkansas Coffee with Democrats. You've had a few of them focused on efforts in Arkansas by local activists and organizers and groups who are trying to fight against book bans in libraries. They're just removing books from children's sections and putting them in adult sections that they just find offensive. And that doesn't just include LGBTQIA plus. It also includes things like I think there was one that was like a Native American woman in the military, or like
CRT.
Yeah, all of this stuff.
Yeah, so
I'm wondering if you're seeing that in Georgia, and if you are sort of going to work against those types of plans by the right.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great question. So here's the thing that I'm trying to do here in Georgia, right? And I've had some extensive conversations about some of the things that have been happening, not only with the libraries where they're banning books, because there has been a lot of that, but there's been instances where we actually just had a restaurant shut down in Columbia County, which is one of the more populated counties here, right? And it was due to the fact that they were having drag shows, right? And of course, Columbia County being where there's no elected Democrats, it was kind of like not even a fight, if that makes sense, right? Where it was one of those things that we knew was going to take place, and what you saw was that you didn't have enough Democrats to even put up a fight. Kind of like what we see at the Atlanta Capitol. A lot of times, the Democrats kind of just, say, hey, we're going to put up a fight, but even at the same time, we don't even have enough people to actually have a real fighting chance. So what I understand to be true is that these people that are on the ground trying to fight those battles within the counties cannot do it themselves. What I also know to be true is in the rural areas, communication to the outside world is what we lack, right? So, and I want to point to this particularly being the book ban, right? There are books that are being taken off shelves where you have mothers who are very concerned, mothers and fathers in the household who are very concerned. But once again, they're part of a larger platform. And if I can get the Democratic Party to understand that, like when we have a Columbia County Board of Education meeting, the trouble that we have is that we have only a handful of mothers who are working mothers who care, right? But we don't have a coalition of people who care. And so what I want to do is I want to organize around issues, right? Board of Education meetings. We have here in Georgia, we have 159 counties, and you have Board of Education meeting for each one. It is impossible for one person or even two people to be in all those different Board of Education meetings to figure out what's being banned and things of that nature. But it is possible for us to organize with the people who are active within those areas, even though they have to do their working jobs and things of that nature, to make sure that we can create those groups who are then involved and they're reporting to the higher, right? So we got to be able to create a structure where those different injustices that we deem them as that are happening in those smaller counties that aren't getting reported up, we have to be able to figure out mechanisms where we can create that channel, that communication channel. Because even though they're happening, which I know they're happening a lot in the smaller counties, there's not enough people down there to really make that impact. And that's once again is due to the lack of organization. So I'm trying to fix that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Caroline.
Yeah, that's what's needed. I love that idea. I can definitely see how that would work. I want to see how we could do that here in Arkansas. Because we're seeing currently we've just had 3, and then I looked at the news yesterday, and there's 2 more counties that are now being targeted, and they are removing books about children with disabilities, a book about a child whose mother was in the military, and saying that these are CRT, these are indoctrination for our children, and it's absolutely just not true. And we do have amazing people here that are fighting against that, but they can't be everywhere. So I love your idea of creating a statewide coalition that is able to keep track of everything going on throughout the state and report back and then kind of come up with a plan to combat that. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Madeline.
Oh yeah. Oh, Madeline. Hey, Madeline.
Oh, hey, y'all. So, I thought you'd recognize we talked so much. I have a quick question for you. Let's say you're elected. It's 2024. You're starting your very first session as a U.S. House of Representative representing Georgia. You are going to be in there with people of the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, all these other people that are in the U.S. House. And what we've seen in Georgia, especially, is a lot of our more conservative representatives voting against things like all of Biden's legislation that he's put through, Bidenomics, supporting Ukraine, legalizing marijuana, protecting reproductive justice, and just the whole gamut. So when you become elected, what is your plan to not only work with the party of Democrats that are trying to get things passed, but also work across the aisle and get things passed? What is your plan to combat that far right mentality and do the work that you are there to do as a representative?
No, absolutely, Madeline. Thank you for that question, because that leads me to the central point of I think why I'm going to be effective. So coming from the federal government for 20 years, it's I'm not even gonna say it's sad to say, because once again I try not to do the red versus blue thing, but I worked with a lot of Republicans, right? And fact of the matter is that Republicans, what I see, the guys and gals that are actually in uniform in Congress, they're playing a game right now, right? It's just a game. Now there are some people, some Republicans on that side who are actually for nation, and so for me, I don't want to waste time on the people who are on the other side of the aisle who are there for the gimmicks, right? And we just so happen to have a lot of those that you just named, right? I want to openly and outly challenge what they're putting out there, their narratives, because I think that we have to have representation that speaks strongly towards or against what the Marjorie Taylor Greenes are saying. But I want to make the connection with those Republicans who have common sense legislation in mind, right? As you just said, there's marijuana, right? Well, why do we have over half of the states who have done extensive research on how marijuana helps, people with PTSD, how it helps, all these other afflictions. Why do we still hold it so that we have these states that are holding off, and now you have people who are still going to jail behind certain infractions behind this drug that has already been approved in other states? Once again, there are certain things where Republicans and Democrats agree upon. My goal to, start off my first day is to connect with those people who are common sense, who aren't going to play this silly game of politics and continue to hinder the lives and place obstacles in the lives of people who are young in this country just due to politics. And I want to say this, and then I want to kind of get off of this because I know I can be long-winded. The big problem that we have right now is politicization of the military. All right, there are a lot of resources that go to our military and to our Defense Department, but right now, Democrats, we are not messaging well about how Republicans are politicizing military. Hell, right now, the Republicans are actually starting their own commissions within Congress to talk about how Democrats are politicizing the military. But we really need to do our research, and we need to message well how Republicans are screwing over the military. All right. So there are a number of things that I want to do to make sure that from a Democratic standpoint, we message well about how our Republican counterparts on the other side aren't.
Looks like we lost you there.
Yeah, we might need to ask Daniel to drop off and rejoin us.
Oh, can you hear me?
There you are. Yes,
Okay,
we can hear
sorry.
you.
You're back now.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm not sure where I left off, but just to summarize everything, bottom line to it is there are Republicans on the other side who make common sense decisions. Actually, I want to point out Republican Chip Roy in Texas. He actually just mentioned the National Defense Authorization Act, how he did not want to put his signature on it until we started to look at the Defense Department and how much money we're spending, right? That's a key thing because, once again, it's only one pot of money, and we're trying to fight for programs on the Democratic side where we know we're eating up a lot of dollars, unneeded dollars on the federal side, right? So those are the types of things that I want to be able to do. I want to be that truth teller within the room to say, no, we're not doing any gimmicks. We're going to stand up for what's right for the people who are at the bottom, who need that economic upliftment, who need that support at the bottom. So hopefully that summarizes, Madeline.
Thank you so much. And it looks like we have a question from Ray. Hey, Ray.
Hey, how are you? Not really a question, just another comment to Daniel's point, and kind of like the weaponization of using the military as kind of like a prop, if you will. Kind of like what Senator Tommy Tupperville is using, and not allowing military promotions going through, all because of the federal government choice to do with her bodily autonomy in the military, and him holding up military promotions, which is detriment to military readiness, with people retiring from the military and stuff like that, and then having to promote, and very important positions need to get filled. But I agree 100% on everything that you were saying, including that of the LGBTQIA plus community, as myself being a member of. And I applaud you 100%. If I was a member of your constituency, I would vote for you 100%. Thank you very much for being a strong ally, and a member of our military. Thank you very much. I'm very proud of you.
Hey, thank you for your support, Ray. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because what you just said was profound. When you start to talk about the things, like say, politicizing the military, the Republicans are getting away with it, right? Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Alabama, he actually he's holding up those promotions, right? But here's the key to it. A lot of people don't understand. his real thing is that he's holding up certain promotions, right? Because the thing that we understand in the military, as me, I was a warrant officer, and I don't think I said this to the group earlier. I worked with a lot of the 4-stars that we hear about in the news, right? Being a warrant officer, working at that 4-star level, I understand behind the scenes. And behind the scenes is the military has always had a problem with, we don't want to call it racism, let's call it favoritism, where there had to be a certain face in a certain position. And that position usually wasn't attended by colored people, right? And you start to see a lot of that right now. And to that point, Tommy Tuberville, who is in the news right now about white nationalism, how he will not, he will not speak against white nationalists. You have to understand Alabama is rooted in that, right? So when you have a senator from there like Tommy Tuberville, you have to understand that it's not just about abortion when it's with him, right? Just like when you have Republicans standing up right now saying, hey, we want to send our military to fight the cartel in Mexico, right? They can say that, and it's not publicized by the Democratic Party. And then what we don't do is we don't tie that to underserved communities where we send our kids out there to be those soldiers that they're deploying as political props, right? So there's a lot that's happening behind the scenes with the military, where the military is under direct attack from Republicans. And Republicans are going against everything that they've seen, the progress that has happened with gays in the military, right? With everything from women being able to be in the military and being able to be in combat MOSs. This has been a long time coming. The Republicans current across the board, right? Governor Kemp, why he's so successful is because he walks that fine line, right? That's why he can't walk along with Trump until it's behind closed doors. So what we have to be very wary of is that you have Republicans right now who front as Democrats out here, right? There are clear Democrats who bat for the Republican side. We have to be very forceful in what we're saying. So the military point, I appreciate that, Ray. If we can actually start to highlight those things, I think we're going to get a lot of veterans on our side, and people are going to start to take the Democratic Party as a whole seriously when it comes to defending the nation.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely. Go ahead, Madeline.
Hey, y'all. So while we're on the topic of minority groups that are used as pawns by the Republican Party, I'm genuinely curious because, Daniel, you do have a advantage of inside CD12 is the powerhouse of what we know to be the disability caucuses of the Democratic Party of Georgia. Our youth and our main party chairs are in Bullitt County, and we have, the only county caucus for disability is in Bullitt County inside our county committee. And I'm just genuinely curious as the chair of our party caucus. And I know that you and Jill and I have had all kinds of conversations, and you've been doing a lot of self-education on the disability issues. What is the most important issue to you that you would find most important or the most pressing involving the disability community? And this is not a gotcha question. I'm just genuinely curious of what your opinion would be of the most pressing issue you would want to handle.
Wow, definitely not a gotcha question, because I have engaged with a number of people on different obstacles that the disabled community is facing. I think number one, I think transportation. I think I talked to a number of people about transportation or lack thereof. I think that's a huge problem, and it's not just transportation, because the transportation overall is kind of horrible in the rural area, but we have a number of disabled people who like to go from point A to point B, but they're just not capable of doing so, right? Due to the lack of transportation, mediums that are available, right? So I would definitely focus on that. I think that the care thing, the healthcare thing, is also high on the list, and I would also start to talk about more technologies to support the disabled. So I think those are my top three. I know it's not a got you, and I know you asked me for one, but there's a lot that I've been talking about, and I just wanted to kind of give light to those things. So yeah, transportation, definitely a big one. The actual healthcare, I think we lack that in different areas to be able to provide the services to the disabled community, and then the technology that we have in those areas to be able to provide disabled community with that access to the care. So
Yeah, those are, I think, great answers. And I'm actually, you asked one of the questions that I had listed, Madeline, so thank you. I also, I wanted to ask you about the impact of, so the Supreme Court, they've made a bunch of rulings. One of the few positive ones that they made was in ruling against Alabama's GOP electoral map. And they did it, on the grounds that it violated the Voting Rights Act. I'm wondering, what you can say in terms of how you think this will impact Georgia and what, if any, effect it will have on your own district.
Yeah, so I've been doing some reading on the whole thing with the electoral maps. So for those that are online that don't know, in 2021, in late 2021, the state legislature here in Georgia, they redrew the map. And so the 12th congressional district, as it is now, we are pretty much leaning Republican, right? So we have 9 out of the 14 that are strong Republican here in Georgia. So what took place in Alabama with those, the Supreme Court actually striking that down, it gives me hope that once once the process goes back, and because there are a number of challenges that are taking place right now that are going to be seen or heard. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to focus on us waiting around for a map to be drawn in our favor. We really need to focus on that voter turnout that we talked about earlier. It's great that we can actually redraw that map, but from the research that I've seen, we're going to have minimal gains because, once again, the state legislature is still Republican. That's not going to change, right? And the way we redraw the map, the people who are responsible for redrawing the map, that's not going to change. So we have to really focus on the getting the vote out and turning those voters out. So that's my answer to it. I want to be cheerful about, we're redrawing maps, and North Carolina and a lot of other states, they're going through that process of submitting those those challenges to the law. But at the end of the day, we need to focus on voter turnout. I don't want to focus on the redistricting because we have a lot of winnable districts right now. It's just voter turnout sucks because of the belief within the Democratic Party.
Voter turnout is so important. The U.S. government has paid reparations in the past to enslavers for the loss of income when chattel slavery was abolished, and again in 1989 to survivors of Japanese internment camps. When elected, would you support H.R. 40? It's a bill that was introduced in 1989, calling for the creation of a special commission to study the issue of reparations.
Absolutely. So
Love
yeah,
it.
absolutely. That's just the one word answer. I can give a lot more to that. What I will say is that the United States of America, we have an obligation to the world, right? To actually put our best foot forward, and to do that, we actually have to be open and honest with our citizens about our history, about the wrongdoings in our history, and then we have to set those wrongdoings right. And I think that's across the board, right? It just so happens that being a Black American, there's the history of Black Americans has not been great here in the United States, right? Like, let's just say that, just to summarize the way that Black Americans have been treated over time. So the least that can be done is the commission, right? And just to get to a term of reparations, I think we really need to explain to people what reparations mean. Number one, across the board, is education in this campaign, because I feel as if you can educate people and get them to understand, like, hey, reparations, we're not just talking about paying out money. And no, it's not about paying out money to people who weren't even slaves. No, we have to explain reparations to get people to understand that the community morally, righteous, and us actually saying, yes, we practice what we preach. We need to take a hard look at, things like this, right? Where it's clear and evident, right? There's been a number of research studies that have been done, to include, I read one from the Brookings Institute, where there's an overwhelming amount of evidence as to why a commission is needed. So we kind of know what's going to come back from that. But what I hope comes back from that is people coming together to just understand that we just need to fix the wrongdoings from the past, right? Whether that's monetary, whether that's improving the education system in some of these underserved communities, which just so happen to be predominantly Black. Let's put money towards fixing that education system. And that's one thing that I'm all about for the campaign, is figuring out, as a community, as a nation, how do we take the resources that we have, because we are very plentiful, and how do we spread those out evenly to make sure that everyone has a chance to actually achieve that American dream here in the U.S.
I love that. And I absolutely agree. Go ahead, Audra.
Oh, I keep muting myself and then muting myself again when I start talking. So I question about what's going on it's not in Augusta, but it's in Atlanta. So there's been, a movement to what's called the Stop Cop City, so to stop the building of this mega complex that would, that has environmental implications, obviously racial justice implications, violence implications. Can you speak a little bit about your own view on what they're calling Cop City and the efforts that organizers and activists are doing to prevent it from being built?
Yeah, absolutely. Cop City, as you said, it's in Atlanta. I haven't actually spoken directly, right? Because a lot of times it's ground truth that you need to get, but just from everything that I've read so far on Cop City, I think it's sad, right? At the end of the day, you have a government, right? Atlantic City Council, as well as the mayor, Andre Dickerson. They're on the side of approving, right, pushing it forward, right? They just had in June where they approved the money to go towards it. And the argument from the protesting side is one that is righteous, right? Like they say, hey, you're gonna, knock down forest area to do this. Why would you do that? Right now, it's looking as if there's going to be double the cost, right? Even though there's people saying, well, that cost was already there, so that's an argument. And then you have the threat of people or the city actually utilizing that location to militarize the police force against the residents or the community. So with all that taken into account, my biggest issue is that I wish the protesters, the energy that they had was spent towards getting elected officials in office that they can depend on. And it's a learning lesson, right? Because I've seen these protests time and time again throughout history, right? And we're taught that, hey, we have to protest to be heard. And it's shameful. But the thing is, it's very difficult for Andre Dickerson, the city council, and everyone who is being directed to do these things. And it's sad because I've been in government for a while. I know when people receive pressure who are elected officials, they receive pressure from certain sides to get certain things done because of the things that have been taking place in Atlanta, right? Where Buckhead, the predominantly the rich suburbs of Atlanta, there you start to see violence there, right? So now you're being forced to do things where you may not totally agree with it, but you're going to do it anyways because you want to be able to support everyone. So I think it's an unfortunate situation. But what I would say to the protesters, I think that the people who are in charge right now, who are the elected officials, they are set on their course of direction. I would not want to see more protesters lose their lives or be beaten on by police or things of that nature. I get the point. I would ask them to use that same energy and take that to what they're doing right now. They actually have a referendum petition that they're pushing. I think that they have to get 75,000 people to sign it, which is it's going to be able to allow them to put a referendum on the upcoming election that they're having. So that right there, I think, is where the energy should be right now. Not the protests. let's stop that. Let's actually take power. If you have a problem with what's going on, let's take power. Let's give power to the people that are going to do the things the right way, right? So hopefully that answers your question.
Hey, hey Daniel, this is Len. Can
Mhm.
you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I know I've been listening on and off, and I'm driving, so hopefully everything comes through okay. I've heard a lot of people talk about get the vote out. I think what we need to do is couple that with registering new voters. I mean, there are voters who are coming off rolls who haven't voted for 5 or 6 years. And unless we have a very succinct message that plays to them, they are not going to come out. So we need to get new voters registered and then get them to come out and vote. Agreed?
Hey, 100% agreed. Actually, I just had a conversation with a young lady from Georgia Shift, and she told me that they're losing funding to be able to get out to do voter registration because of the lack of people that they've been registering. So yeah, I 100% agree. The time is now for us to start that registration, and it goes back to the DNC. I can only do so much fundraising on my own to be able to get those resources here and get the people organized to do it. We need to have an equal, partnership between us, Atlanta, in DC to really get voter registration humming in this area. I'm going to be out there with you guys. I'm trying to organize it right now out in Truland County and in Lawrence County. So Madeline, I'm definitely going to have her in lockstep with me, arm in arm, to make sure we get her out there to see those people in Truland County. But that's what we have to do. We have to have those voter registration events. But I know they can be more plentiful if we're able to get the resources in to help us organize.
Yeah, and that is something that DNC's Rural Council is working on, just so that you know. Also, here in Statesboro, we have the last Saturday of each month for the next 4 months to register voters at the farmers market. And then also Georgia Equality will be doing an event here July 29th. If you're not aware of that, I could forward you an email on that.
No, absolutely. I would appreciate any emails you can send my way. Thank you very much, Lynn.
All right. Thank you all.
Well, this is going to be bringing our coffee with Dems down to a close. We've been on here for an hour, and I just want to highlight some of the things that we've heard today from Daniel. And first of all, we want to recognize and tell Daniel, thank you so much for coming on Coffee with Dems and sharing this time with us. But from my standpoint, listening back on this conversation for the last hour and listening to Daniel, he's beyond a normal candidate, folks. So be sure and get behind Daniel and help him with his campaign. He's very well educated. He's an excellent speaker. You've all heard him for the last hour, how he's able to articulate the message in an exceptional way. So we really need to support Daniel in this effort to overturn and get rid of the Republican. I've got it down here in my notes who the Republican is. Allen, I think, is his name.
Rick
So
Allen.
we need to get Rick Allen out of office. The way that Daniel is able to both positively and negatively criticize the DNC and do so in a very proper way is I think very meaningful to everybody. We don't all have to agree with what's going on with the DNC, but when we do voice our criticism, we have to do it in a very professional manner, and Daniel has met that threshold, and I really appreciated that, because we need to continue to push the DNC in the direction that we want the DNC to go, and that's something that we need to be focused on, because we keep talking about the DNC messaging. We're failing on the DNC messaging. And we're not failing on the DNC messaging. The fact is, the DNC messaging is so broad that the Republicans, all they have to focus on is just a handful of issues, where the DNC has to focus on many different issues, because we are a full tent party. We're not just a white nationalist party. We are a full tent where we involve everybody. So because of that, we have so many messages that are out there, it becomes convoluted, and it's okay, because we have to criticize ourselves and the DNC for what they're doing. The way that Daniel was able to talk and discuss about the LGBT community, I think was superb. You know, we've got to be able to embrace the LGBT community in the manner in which he brought up. Plus, beyond that, we have to be able to support them in a more meaningful manner. I thought his stories were meaningful and direct. The fact is, then throughout his entire conversation with us today, Daniel's talked about unity. And that's something that I found very important with our conversations with future candidates, is the fact that we have to have unity. We have to have unity within the Democratic Party. We have to come together and support one another. And that's something that I found very important. The fact that he is so involved and has so much knowledge with the military, and being able to talk about the military politicization, talking about Tommy Tuberville and Governor Kemp, soft shoeing MAGA, and all that stuff was, you know, it was an exceptional conversation, and was the way that he articulated that message again was exceptional. And I want to thank Daniel for his ability to handle his questions. We posed some very hard questions. We had a panel discussion today, which is something we don't do very often, but we had all of our people on here all across the nation that were on this panel talking with Daniel about issues, particularly the issues in Georgia, where we had Lynn and Madeline, but we also had Audra and we had Calais that were throwing these questions, as well as Ray. I didn't mean to forget Ray, but Ray out of Ohio. We really threw a lot of really good questions at him, and he was able to answer those questions and articulate those very well. Again, we need to find out one more piece of information from Daniel before he leaves. Daniel, how can we support you both financial and as a volunteer? Give us your website and give us your Account Blue information so that we can try to support you both financially as well as provide volunteer support.
Yes, sir. And I don't want to step on any toes. I know that Callis and Audra, they had some of my information, but I have a link tree. If everyone's familiar with Linktree, you can find me on Linktree under DJ for Congress. But my website is www.danieljacksonforcongress.com. And either from the Linktree or from the website, you should be able to access my Ag Blue. You should see a donate place on the homepage on both platforms. But you will also be able to access all of my social media platforms as well. My Facebook is DJ for Congress. My IG is DJ for Congress. And my LinkedIn is DJ for Congress, as well as my Twitter. So DJ for Congress is the handle. And just let me know if you need me to repeat the website or the other information.
I see that we have actually got that up in the nest, so that people who are on here can go up into the nest. They'll also be able to come back to this Twitter site and get that information from this conversation. So again, thank you so much, Daniel. You've been an exceptional speaker, and we've really been, I'm very proud to have had you on Coffee with Democrats to have this conversation today, because it was such a meaningful conversation, and the way that you were able to do so, again, you're not a normal candidate, you're not a normal person. You have exceptional knowledge, and you have the exceptional ability to be quick on your feet, answer the questions, and do so meaningfully. So we really appreciate everything that you're bringing to the table, and we wish you nothing but the most success in the future. Next week, we are going to have Tennessee House of Representatives, the Honorable Gloria Johnson on. As you guys will all remember, Gloria was involved in the issues that took place after the shooting in Nashville, where the Democrats went to the floor of the House in Tennessee to argue that they needed to be heard, and her and her black colleagues were sanctioned. Her black colleagues were actually kicked out, but they were reinstated. We're going to have that conversation with Gloria, and we're really excited to have her on Coffee with Dems next week. The following week on the 27th, we're going to have an abbreviated Coffee with Democrats. It's only going to be from 10:30 to 11. It's going to be a very short conversation, and that's going to be with Oklahoma Senate Minority Leader, the Honorable Kay Floyd. And we can't wait for that conversation too. So we've got 2 weeks in a row that are coming up, not including the one that we just had or the one that we had last week. So 4 weeks in a row, we've had exceptional guests going on here to Coffee with Dems, and we're looking forward to the next 2 weeks. So please come back and join us in the next 2 weeks. Audra and Kelly, you guys have comments that you wanted to say before we close this down?
Nope, just wanted to say thank you again, Daniel. It's great talking to you.
Hey, same here. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And we will also be having a Coffee with Democrats in Arkansas tomorrow. We'll be in Fort Smith talking with Herb Gill and Miss Carolyn Mosley at 9 a.m. Central. I hope you guys check us out.
And that'll also be live streamed tomorrow on both of our Facebook and our YouTube channel. So if you don't come back tomorrow, please join us again tomorrow. So until tomorrow at 9 a.m. And next week on Thursday, everybody, please be safe, and we will